Well, in the Europa League, it's been a successful one for both Premier League teams and a mixed bag of results for the teams from the Scottish Premiership. Leipzig beat Celtic by 2-0. Arsenal with a late winner from Danny Welbeck to beat Sporting Lisbon in Lisbon. Rangers drew 0-0 at home to Spartak Moscow, and Chelsea a 3-1 win against BATE Borisov. Chelsea going great guns, it seems, Emma, under Maurizio Sarri. You're part of the club, part of the complex. What was he brought to the Chelsea side?
I think he's just brought, a calmness that the environment, needed. I think he's bringing the best out of his most talented players, and he's gone out and he's bought the right players. In Jorginho and in particular Kepa, I think they're two players that have raised the level for Chelsea. One, because the keeper can play out the back with composure, but we've also got a midfielder now, I think, that links everything. I don't think you can underestimate the importance of David Luiz for the team in terms of just that little bit of leadership, that little bit of character. And a team that, when they're playing well and they're on it, they're no doubt one of the best teams in the Premier League. And, so far so good under Sarri. And it has to be said, it's a quality group. Tonight,
though, a hat-trick for Ruben Loftus-Cheek. I mean, how much of his confidence can he take, and how much of a chance does that give him in terms of getting more Premier League minutes? 33 for him.
It's brilliant for him, but I know internally within the club he's a player everybody wants to see him do well. He's a fantastic product coming through the youth system and has stayed patient at times when others might have felt he should have gone out on loan sooner. I think having a World Cup and a shorter recovery period has hindered him in the earliest stages, but he's sticking at it, and importantly, when he's been given his chances, he's taken them, and that's all you can ask of a player.
As a manager, though, Emma, what would you say to him? After that performance tonight, and the team that you've got, what do you say to him?
You've given me a major problem. I mean, the reality is you're talking about a 60-game season. It's not going to be the same starting 11 week in, week out. There's going to come moments with suspensions, with injuries, games accumulations, that he's going to have to be ready. If Chelsea are going to have a sustained challenge, Loftus-Cheek is going to have an impact at some point in the season.
Is it about being consistent in your message to a player?
Absolutely, and we talk about hitting the levels that you expected. I mean, Chelsea has a very high bar, in terms of performance and level and expectation in that club, and on the football pitch. And he has to hit those levels every opportunity he gets. So whether it's now in the Europa League, whether it's in a cup game, whether he comes on as a substitute in the Premier League, or even if he starts one, he has to reproduce that level of performance.
But he's had to accumulate that experience, and I think that takes a while. Whether it's the combination of England, Crystal Palace, some occasional appearances with the first team, he is more readied now, I think, than ever to really challenge seriously within that. And some of that requires a degree of perseverance and waiting for the right moment, and if it comes, you've got to take it.
Yeah, and the question is at Chelsea, though, will he be given that opportunity? Because the levels of expectation, if the manager has a slight doubt about whether or not he could produce that every time, he's not necessarily going to go with him. He's going to go with someone like Jorginho all the time, Kovacic, and then the likes of Eden Hazard, of course. He's fighting against some unbelievable names, isn't he?
No doubt, but there are 2-3 games a week on a regular basis as it goes on. He will play a role, and the more that he produces performances like he did tonight, the more opportunities he will be given. And I think you've seen that with Barkley. You get yourself, more tactically prepared to play within the way Sarri wants them to play. I think the closer he gets to that, I believe that opportunities will, become available to him.
Yeah, do you think if he stays at Chelsea and doesn't look for a loan deal, there's no real talk that he's going to be looking for a loan move away? But one of the effects of there having been a World Cup was that he did come back late into the squad, which doesn't give Sarri much time, really, to form his squad and say, look, I need everybody to stay because I want to look at them all. If he were to move away, would those minutes help him, do you think?
For sure. Yeah, every minute he gets is going to help him. I mean, that sort of performance, if in January, Maurizio Sarri decide, what, at this moment in time, you need another 6 months to go out there and play in the Premier League, there's no doubt whatsoever he'll have a list as long as your arm of clubs wanting to sign him, because he's a top quality player, and he showed that tonight again. He showed it last season at times at Palace, but obviously had a problem with injuries, and and rightly so, he was also part of the World Cup squad.
What do you think's best for his development then?
I think with any player, it's about playing games. And, he's at that age now. I think he's still got time. I think he can still afford another sort of season where he's in and out, and still gaining that experience, so long as he's given opportunities at times.
I think you could argue he's making the progress that you're looking to do, and I think you can do that off the back of a solid season.
But I don't think you can do the bit part appearances like that. If they're few and far between, depending on how big a gap it is between games, it's really difficult, I think, to keep backing up at a certain level if you're not playing games consistently.
But it takes a moment for an injury. Chelsea only have to pick up one injury in a key area around that central space. And Loftus-Cheek right now is a player that can come into the team. And I think, I do think there has to be just a little bit of patience, but pushing at the training ground every day, which I'm sure he is. And I think scoring hat-tricks, albeit in a Europa League night, is a real statement, and one that says, I can do what you're asking me to do, and just you have to wait for the opportunities, because it could be said that the team that's currently playing are performing well, and you can't just change that. I think he will get his time, and I think the more he sticks at it, shows the perseverance and the character when he's called upon. I think he will make it at Chelsea.
I think it'll depend on what happens between now and January. And if comes January he's not played very many games, I think he'll look to go out, and I think it's probably the best for his development that he will go out and play another. If he gets another 6 months under his belt and plays consistently and plays in the Premier League and stays fit, I think that's even probably a better form of development for him.
Talking of consistency, Arsenal with 11 wins on the road, do they look as good as those results suggest, Emma?
Yeah, they look fantastic. I think 11 wins, not just 11 good results, 11 wins is very un-Arsenal-like. But this manager has instilled the confidence and the belief. Everybody was critical at the beginning of his obsession to play out from the back or overplay. The reality is he's stuck by his philosophy very early on. He's shown that if you're not producing the performance that he's looking for, he's willing to take you out of the team. And I think Arsenal the other night, in particular, Ozil, for the first time for me, produced one of the best performances I've ever seen in an Arsenal shirt. One, he might be happy and the way that the team's playing, but he looks like he's got the confidence and the stability around him. I think the likes of Torreira coming into the team has given Arsenal that little bit of stability behind the play to allow the attacking players to flourish. And there's an aggression and there's a togetherness that hasn't been there for some time with Arsenal.
Is it clicked, Mark?
It has so far. I think it has. And I think, you look at the first 2 games of the season, we talk about, the performance at home against Manchester City, trying to play out like they did, try to almost not match Man City, but, reinvent themselves in terms of being more of a ball-playing side, playing out at the back at every opportunity. It was a tall order to come up against a side like Manchester City, who's so much further down the line in terms of under a manager and know the system and have had many transfer windows to accumulate the players that he wants. But they stuck with it. At Chelsea, they lost 2-1. They weren't humiliated. They still had chances in that game. And from that point, they've just gotten stronger and stronger. So, you know what? I think a lot of people have said that they had no chance of even finishing in the top 4 because they hadn't really bought enough to really strengthen the side. But the way they're playing at the moment, and we say at the moment because we're 10 games in, we're including 11 games in all competitions. But, you'd rather be in the position that they're in right now rather than talking about having lost a whole lot of games.
Very quickly, we had a question in saying, with PSG, Spurs and Monaco likely to be going into the Europa League, don't know that yet, but it looks possible, can Chelsea and Arsenal still be front-runners in the competition? Are they as strong as some of the teams that might be dropping into it?
Yeah, I think so. I think English teams in general are progressing to the latter stages of the competition. But it all comes down to the later stages of the season, the injuries. When you're playing Thursday, Sunday nights, it's not ideal for teams, and how much they invest in that. I think at the later stages, you see that teams really want to progress with it, and there's no doubt that an English team could win it this year.
I think the fact that if PSG go into the Europa League, for example, is how much of an incentive is that for them? Are they that interested in playing in the Europa League? You'd like to think that they would be. I mean, like Chelsea did, all those years ago, that they were playing in the Europa League, and they went, right, you know what, we're here. Whilst we're here, let's try and win this thing, and they went on to win it. It still is a major trophy, albeit not the Champions League. It's the next best thing.